Heywood. Lin-Manuel Miranda, you are the man of the moment, the man of the hour, the man of the year.
Thank you. I remember being Conrad Birdie, and all the girls in the grade had to faint when I sang. And I said, I'm doing this for the rest of my life.
Maybe you've heard of him, NFL superstar, Hall of Famer Joe Montana.
The game is just so much fun. I always say I wish people could go out on the field one Sunday afternoon and play the game. And win or lose, just to get that feeling of what it's like out there. Because there's nothing like it, and nothing like it around.
Tony Robbins.
I just started to cry and cry. And I realized in that moment, this happened because I did what was right. I didn't do things for brownie points. I didn't do it for positioning. My heart knew it was right, and I did it. And I was rewarded. It's like the money showed up.
But how is that different from me wanting to give my last paycheck to the Broadway show I want to invest in?
It's not different than that. If you did that once, it would be good. If you do it regularly, you're in trouble.
Fair enough.
Todrick Hall.
Todrick, I love you.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I think we're going to be best friends.
I agree.
I'm following you back on Instagram and Twitter right now, and it's going to be a BFF situation. You have no choice.
Welcome, Tori Amos.
Hi, Laura. What's going on in the world, we have to respond to that and work together every night, collaboratively. I think that's essential because it's important that we're sharing, yes, our stories, but we're also planting seeds.
Liza Koshy. You are both on screen and off, really setting an incredible example for the young people of today. And it's really been an honor to spend this time with you today, Liza.
I'm in love with you.
Let's get married.
Let's go.
On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
Dollar Bill himself, Kelly AuCoin. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood, and with me today is one of New York City's finest stage actors who also has a stunningly diverse television resume. Most notably, he's currently starring as Dollar Bill, the cheapest millionaire in America on Showtime's Billions. He was practically unrecognizable as the pious Pastor Tim on The Americans. He played Hercules Mulligan in AMC's Turn: Washington Spies. He's a true chameleon, one of those, oh, that guys, which I think is the ultimate mark of a true character actor. On Broadway, he played Octavius Caesar opposite Denzel Washington in Julius Caesar. And his off-Broadway credits include The Wayside Motor Inn at Signature, for which he won a Drama Desk Award, The Call at Playwrights Horizons, Of Good Stock at Manhattan Theater Club, which is where we met, and he'll be returning to MTC in May with Long Lost by Pulitzer Prize winner Donald Margulies. Welcome, Kelly AuCoin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled that you're here because in addition to being one of my favorite actors, you're also just like the nicest person I've ever met.
Well, I appreciate that. You're pretty nice too.
Oh, thank you. So let's start with Billions, can we?
Yeah.
Dollar Bill started as kind of an ensemble, not background guy, but his character arc has really grown and he's become a star. Or you've become a star, I guess.
Well, it has definitely grown. The interesting thing I tell people, it's interesting to me anyway, I tell people a lot is I actually initially turned down this audition. When I first auditioned, it was for a different character, and that one we knew was for the pilot. We knew it was recurring, and it went well. But they didn't want me for that character. They brought me back to audition for Dollar Bill. It wasn't even listed as potential recur. It just had 3 lines maybe in the pilot, and I was like, I'm not there anymore. I really want to make sure that if I'm auditioning for something that it's substantial. And then I spent the weekend thinking, wow, Dollar Bill, it's kind of a fun nickname, and they described him as the cheapest millionaire in America, and I was like, there's something percolating in their brains about this character. I'll go in. So I called my agent on Monday and said, if I can still get in, I'd like to audition. And
did it have anything to do with the fact that your name has coin in it and his name has
Never
Bill
occurred to me till maybe season 2 when I started getting more airtime. People on Twitter started saying, that's why he was cast. Gold coin.
It's an upgrade.
Yeah. But I was, I got in, I got the part, and it did grow. By the second half of the first season, I was doing more stuff, and so it was a gamble. But it was almost the worst career move of my life to turn down the audition. That would have been
so many people
Ludicrous.
have stories like that.
Yeah.
Like Renee Elise Goldsberry, who won the Tony for Hamilton for playing Angelica Schuyler, told her agent twice that she wouldn't do it.
Really?
Yeah. She had a new baby, and she was just like, and she said like the character description was Nicki Minaj meets I forget who the other person was,
right.
but she thought like learning the rap. She wasn't really a rapper, and you know.
It's just, it's amazing. There are decisions we make all the time, and we, as actors, and we don't know what a project's really going to be like. Some of the best sounding stuff I have it turned out to be things that I wasn't really proud to be in, and some of the things that sounded. I mean, I've passed on some things that were pretty phenomenal when I went to see them.
Please tell me you can name names.
I shouldn't. It's just.
Yeah, fair enough. It's not fair to the actor who ended up playing the role.
And sometimes it was passing on auditions. So, you know, I say I passed. The producers are like, who are you again now?
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with that name. So.
Oh, man. Yeah. But I really feel like you would have, if you'd passed on that audition, it's not like you can live the alternate reality.
Right.
So you might have ended up in something else and thinking, or maybe there's an alternate reality where one of these things you passed on turned out to be your star turn.
True, and you never. I know that they had an arc in mind, and they still have an arc in mind for the show. But I also know that, and they've said that things take turns. They give themselves room to write as things appeal to them. So some of these characters that they thought were going to be bigger may have fallen by the wayside. Other characters that they didn't necessarily think a whole lot about, maybe like Dollar Bill, started to grow. I like to think it was because they gave me a shot to do something, and maybe it went well, and they're like, oh, let's give them a little more and a little more. And then this year's my first as a series regular. So that's exciting.
And I was really excited. I did not know that you were – I've only seen you in straight plays. I've never seen you in a musical, but you can sing.
In Philly last night, and they blew up his house, too. Out on a boardwalk, they're getting ready for a fight.
Stop it. Yeah.
Talk to me about singing Bruce Springsteen full voice on set in front of the whole Billions crew.
It was joyous. I grew up such a Springsteen fan. He was one of my heroes, along with Bill Walton and Clyde Drexler, basketball, Portland Trailblazer players.
Hey, congrats on the playoffs.
Thanks.
You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, we are. It was. I remember when I was reading the script at home, I actually yelped or squealed in the other room, and my wife was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Did you drop something?"
Wait, what does that sound like?
Oh, something along those lines.
And what did it say? Dollar Bill sings Atlantic City by Bruce Springsteen?
Yep. It didn't. I don't even think it necessarily said Springsteen, but I know that album and that song so well that as soon as it said, I think I don't even think I read the stage direction. I think I just saw, well, he blew up the Chicken Man in Philly last night, and I was like, wait a minute,
I know that song.
This is about to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. And Carolyn, my wife, took a little video of me actually rehearsing the song to make sure that I got it right. I was by our CD player, and I'm singing it, and I say, "Oh, I got it," and it's sort of embarrassing, but.
You're gonna live. I mean, you're gonna be a Chicken Man forever.
I'll take it. I mean, to be able to, the first time I sing on TV, to have it be Springsteen and have it to be like not one of the ones that necessarily everybody knows, but anyone who's a fan knows and loves, was fantastic.
Is this the kind of thing where Bruce hears about it and like gets in touch? Have you heard anything from?
Well, I know that he liked and maybe retweeted when I tweeted about it. Now,
oh my gosh!
I tweeted over and over just so something like this could happen.
A retweet from Bruce is pretty.
Now,
that's big.
Well, I'm guessing that Springsteen himself doesn't run his own Twitter account, and it was probably somebody else. But I'll take it.
Yeah, seriously.
Somebody in the Springsteen camp.
I'm sure he has millions of followers.
I'm sure he does.
And you are really a prolific tweeter, Kelly.
I love. Is that a way of saying I overtweet?
No, not at all. So I think of social media as completely opt-in on the point of view of the person who is following you.
Right.
So if an individual thinks you tweet too much, then they can go elsewhere. They can tune out or, like mute you for a while or whatever.
Right.
I don't think you tweet too much. I think that's why you're so relatable in some of your parts. Like people feel like they know you, and we actually get to know the real you,
right.
who I know from being friendly with you for a long time, that you are so far from being like Dollar Bill. And I think it's good for people to get to know that through social media and interviews, because he's such a dick.
He's such a dick. My wife has said, like, you bring 1 ounce of that guy home and you are out. You're out of the house. He's such a dick, and he could not be further from me, personality-wise, but also politically, which is another thing some people think I overtweet about
politics
on Twitter. But
Look,
it's
if you've
a crazy
got a platform, you got to use your platform.
And to me, it's an extraordinary time, and I have very strong feelings. And I just got into a giant war with someone on the way to rehearsal yesterday on Twitter. But I was like, you know what? I'll live. It's like, I'm going to unfollow you. You should keep your political views to yourself. And I was like, I'll survive without you. But
well, what does that person do for a living?
Didn't say.
I know, but like, let's say they're a house painter. We don't say keep your tweets about house painting.
Yep.
You can talk. Everybody has a job, and we all have a platform with social media. And if go ahead, unfollow.
I know.
I like to say that, and this is not a request, but I like to say that. Every time I lose a follower on social media, the percentage of people who follow me who care has gone up.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it can be a good thing if they're unfollowing because they're not interested anymore. I'd rather have a smaller audience who is really devoted and really gets me and is curious about me, and people who are, that's like why I don't get buying followers.
I have never understood that. Yeah.
I get it from sort of a casting director point of view. I know there are people who are passed over for roles, especially in Hollywood, for people with a bigger social following.
Right.
And so I could see buying followers to get in the room to do the work if it was something like that. But
I wonder what, do you have any sense of what those numbers have to be to start making a difference?
I don't.
I wonder if it's like
guess it's
hundreds
probably,
of thousands or 50,000?
I would guess it's probably millions.
If you're in the millions, it starts to make a difference. Yeah.
I knew a couple of stand-up comedians who were great but couldn't get booked in the big rooms in New York City, and I never talked to them about buying followers or whether they did, but I noticed that somebody who had 1 million followers would get like 2 likes on their tweets, and that to me regularly, and that to me meant that they might not be actually like engaged fans.
It's a red flag.
But this was somebody who was getting booked at the big clubs in New York City, and then building a legitimate following from the people who would see him perform in the big clubs. It's a catch-22, and I think it's too bad that has become so important for booking.
Right, because it is I look. There are so many fans of Billions and formerly of the Americans who are fun to talk to. Like there's when we live tweet, and I generally live tweet every Sunday. Who engage, and they're hilarious. The conversations are really funny, and I have relationships with people I'm never going to meet who, we have these in-jokes, we have running jokes, and it's like, it's I don't know, Jimmy Dean 428. Oh, that's great. And he brings up the thing, sort of like a take on the same joke that we tell every week, and it's great. And it's fun to connect with people like that. It's just unfortunate when it just becomes a numbers game, because in that part of it's
totally
bullshit
agree.
to me. Like,
and
communication is great.
You made your name as an actor in New York before the social media revolution, so people knew you casting director-wise.
Right.
And Pounding the Pavement was a little bit different back then, I can imagine. So you can do it authentically and naturally without worrying about the business stuff. I actually teach social media workshops to college students.
Really?
And one of the things I say is I think it's sort of a half social media class, half life coaching, because I just want to be like, you are enough. Don't try to be like the other person who you think is what the casting directors are looking for. Be the most authentic, relatable, and approachable and available version of yourself, so that when the part comes along that nobody else could possibly play, you're recognizable for that part. I tend to I talk about the 2 leads from Book of Mormon, Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad. And if Josh Gad, who I think would probably describe himself as like kind of schlubby, if he'd been trying to be Andrew Rannells his whole career, nobody would have thought he was right for Elder Cunningham.
It's such a difficult concept to really let sink in when you're a younger actor. You can know it intellectually, but it's so hard to go in and say I'm enough, because in a way that means that you're saying that it's okay that whatever happens, and that's really hard because we all want these jobs, and so we're going to do anything we can to get these jobs. And
I'd just rather have them go take a class to work on the craft than
when you finally get that, and when you finally actually relax and realize, and it allows you to be spontaneous in the room. It allows you to be a better version of yourself in that room. That's when things usually start to take off for actors. It's just hard to grasp at first.
Yeah.
I used to try so hard to figure out exactly what they wanted, and then I would try not to make mistakes. I was acting defensively, and I could feel it shift in the room.
You know, that reminds me of the moment the first moment where I was like, who is this guy as an actor? And that was when I saw you in Of Good Stock at MTC. I was there to see my friend Jennifer Mudge, a fantastic actor.
Jenny Mudge.
And she invited me to come out with you guys afterward. And I remember, do you remember me saying, can I give you a very specific compliment on your acting?
Yes, I remember what it was.
It was you, well, go ahead.
Wasn't it when there was a line that I flubbed, but that I think you said that it's so ridiculous that I remember.
I love that you remember.
But that it was that the way the character corrected himself rather than the actor.
Yeah.
Which I was like, thank you. That's a huge compliment.
Yeah, it was you stumbled over your words. It was clear that it wasn't in the script that way, but instead of doing sort of a retake the way a TV actor would, and I've seen that on stage where somebody rewinds a little bit, does a TiVo click back, and starts the line from the beginning, but instead you let the character make the fumble and make the recovery. And that feels like it relates to what you were just saying about making mistakes in the room.
Right.
And that's a very observable, sort of calculable mistake. You trip over your words. But I think it also probably relates to other kinds of mistakes, quote unquote mistakes you can make in the room.
I think that's probably true. And just still laughing at myself that I remember a specific compliment. That's so silly. Actors.
But that's, I mean...
But it was nice. It was a wonderful thing to hear, and it actually referred to the type of acting that I like to do and I want to do. That a compliment of that nature, and also my favorite type of acting is ensemble acting. So the only award I've ever won is an ensemble award, and I won one for a film and one for Wayside Motor Inn. And I'm like, that to me is... That's the greatest compliment I could be given. And but yes, it what you were talking about before. Like when I've taught actors or if I coach people on auditions, I tell them to use whatever you have in the room too. Like if you have a script with, if you can turn any moment into something where the character would be reading off a piece of paper, do it. Use the scripts. Like anything to make it feel more natural. And if you stumble, make it the character stumbling. Anyway, I think those are relatable things. They're connected.
I am a professional theater goer, so my compliments do tend to be more than just like, you were great. Although I do a lot of that too. I do a lot of like fangirling out, but I try to mix it up with things that show that I was truly watching and truly listening.
Right. How did you and Jennifer Mudge meet, by the way? Did you see her in a show?
Jenny Mudge and I became friends through Twitter. Back in the day, Broadway Girl NYC, my online alter ego, was anonymous. And I ran the account anonymously for 6 years. And it started right when Twitter became a thing, really. It was more than 10 years ago now. Wow. And as social media grew into a marketing thing, whereas when I was using it, it was just kind of like a microblogging platform.
Right.
People within the industry started being like, who is Broadway Girl? Who is this? And Jenny would tweet me and be like, who are you? And I remember seeing her in shows and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. And then I actually was friends with her husband through mutual friends. And he didn't know about my Broadway Girl
that's crazy.
thing. But I went to see Jenny in Into the Woods, where she played the witch at the Laura Pels Theater. And I didn't want to tell her that Broadway Girl was coming, but I did text her husband and say, I'm seeing Jenny's show today, and I'd really like to meet her afterward. And he said, oh, she's probably calling out today because she's been on vocal rest. And I was heartbroken because I was going to tell her in person, I'm Broadway girl. Luckily, she didn't call out, and I did meet her, and I was like, I'm Chris's friend, Laura. And she was like, oh, yeah, he said he was going to be here. And then I handed her my phone, which had the Broadway girl avatar, and I was like, also, this is me. Well, she went from like having the mask of I'm going to be nice to this fan or this friend of my husband, that's nice, to she like grabbed me into a huge bear hug, and we like squealed, and she was like, "When are we hanging out?" And that was maybe a few months, maybe a year before I went public.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So she kept the secret.
She kept the secret.
Nice.
And she became one of what I used to call my spies. Although I really don't traffic in gossip. I did at the very beginning. I tried to get scoops and break news and stuff. And then I realized I didn't like it. I wanted to just love on people.
Yeah.
So
no, it's fun. I love following your account. You're hilarious.
Thank you.
And it's great. I mean, the theater needs advocates, and especially informed advocates. So it's great.
So tell me about this new play you're doing. Are you in rehearsal right now?
Yeah, we just finished the first week of rehearsal. It's a play called Long Lost by Donald Margulies. Dan Sullivan is directing.
Oh, I love everything he does.
Oh, he's great. And I worked with him years ago on the Julius Caesar. He directed the Denzel Washington Julius Caesar. So it's nice to work with him on a four-hander as opposed to a play with 35 people.
Right.
It's nice to have more individual attention. I did a workshop production of this 3 years ago in Illinois at the Sullivan Institute.
Named for him?
Named for him, the University of Illinois. He's taught there for like 20 years. Actually, I'm getting that wrong. Maybe it's the Sullivan Project. But in any case, he brings people out there for a month, and he can work with any playwright he wants. We rehearse for 2.5 weeks, and then we run for a week, and then we go home. So this was an early version of the play. I had a great time working on it, but that was 3 years ago, and I kind of thought, well, that's dead, or it's not going anywhere, or I'm not going with it. And literally the day before I went on my Christmas vacation, I got a call, and they were like, we'd like to offer you this part. And I was like, yes, fantastic. And it fit perfectly in our hiatus, so I like to try to do one play a year when we're not shooting. So this fit perfectly. It's... I'm playing one of two brothers. I'm a successful brother. There's a wayward brother who comes.
Isn't he a Wall Street guy?
Huh? He's a consultant. And,
okay.
In my eye, he's sort of like the George Clooney character in Up in the Air.
You were typecast.
Yes,
were
exactly.
Like,
oh, and I
George
definitely mean
Clooney
physically.
thing?
Yes, yeah. He looks like George Clooney. But he comes in, he consults, he helps businesses figure out how to streamline and how to make themselves more successful and make more money. And my wayward brother comes, tells me he's, he needs my help, and he wreaks havoc while he stays in my apartment.
I love a good havoc wreaking play.
Oh, it's great. No, it's great. It's played by Lee Tergesen, and he's going to be fun.
So previews for that start May 14th.
That's right.
So that's just 3 weeks away.
I know. I can't. It's the first week is always so weird because you start off and you think you have tons of time. By the end of the first week is when I start to panic. It's like, oh, shit. I got to get off book. I got to actually make choices, and I don't know how this is going to come together, and it always does.
I've been thinking a lot about all the memorization that actors have to do, and I've asked about it before and just been told, oh, it's a muscle like any other muscle, but still, I basically binged the last season of Billions. My cable package changed in the middle of season 3, so I'd only watch the first couple. And then once we confirmed this interview, I was like, I guess I have to, for work, get Showtime again. I actually signed up through their website, so I'm not doing it as part of my cable plan. I'm just watching it streaming through Showtime's website. And I watched every episode starting middle of season 3.
Right.
So I feel like I really absorbed those monologues, and the writing is so good.
Really good.
But I thought about some of the spontaneity or perceived spontaneity in the acting choices, and I thought, you really have to know the words before you can get to a point where you're comfortable making choices that will surprise your fellow acters. Right,
and surprise yourself and just feel alive. And that's one of the challenges of TV is like you can get to that point in theater because you have plenty of time to memorize one. It's a longer script, but one script, and then you can be spontaneous. And if you're just memorizing the day before, or if you've got a whole script, it becomes a muscle where you can actually you don't find yourself searching and groping for the line, which you can always see. Someone's a little glassy-eyed when they're acting, but they're actually thinking about what's the next line. It just people get more. The spontaneity comes like that. It is a muscle, and one of the nice things that happens on a long-running TV show is that rehearsal you get with theater is replaced by backstory. You've got the relationships are set. Like Stephen Kunkin and I, who's a wonderful.
Muffy.
No, Kunkin plays Ari Spiros.
Oh my gosh! That character.
Oh, he's a wonderful actor. You've probably seen him on stage in New York a ton. He and I knew each other, but not incredibly well. We'd never done as much as a reading together. And now, last season, we got thrown together, and he's like, I've got such a talent crush on him. And like, we're hanging out even outside of the, offset and everything. But we now know if we get a big scene together like we did last season, we now know that we can play off each other because we know who we are. We don't need rehearsal for that. It's just about getting the lines down, and so you can be spontaneous enough. That's a really roundabout comment on what you said, but it's
that's what I want. I mean, I don't want to hear just again. It's a muscle like any other muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting, but I want to hear I want to hear about what's going on. Who are your other buddies on set? And
for a show that is so much about just toxic masculinity and the abuse of power. I mean, there are no out and out good people on the show. Maybe Maffei, who's just a sweetheart. Poor Maffei.
He tries so hard.
Speaking of stand-up comedians, he's a brilliant one. I don't know if you've seen him, but just saw him at the Bell House the other day. Everyone on the set, given that toxic environment, everyone is wonderful. Damien is, he's such an alpha, but he's the sweetest alpha you're ever going to meet. And Maggie is also the same, and she's great. Another
I have a
wonderful
talent
theater
crush
actor.
on her.
Oh, she's the best.
Whew. I think I have all sorts of crushes on her, actually.
David Costable, who you might be terrified to hang out with, is sort of like that. He's not the libertine, but he's definitely the instigator, the jokester. Another great theater actor, also.
That's what you get when you film a show in New York.
Yeah, you get great theater actors.
So many people that I know, either through I've hung out with them, I've socialized with them, or I've just seen them on stage through for so many years, are showing up on the show. Will Brolland, who's starring in Be More Chill, is now.
Sarah Stiles is now.
When I saw Sarah Stiles
on all the time,
and she's got her character is so sassy, potty mouth.
She's great. Someone was saying she manspreads as well as Dollar Bill, which is true. So Sarah and I get along great. We've met up at Gallagher's for martinis more than once. We're going to go to opening night to see her in Tootsie. She's playing the Terry Garr role in Tootsie.
She's so good in that part.
Daniel
Wait,
Isaac.
that's tonight, isn't it?
No.
Oh, hang on.
No, it's tomorrow.
Okay. I saw a press release come in this morning that said Tootsie opens ... Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. You totally just made me panic.
Yes, Broadway's new comedy musical Tootsie officially opens tomorrow, April 23rd, 2019 at the Marquis Theater. I apologize, and I will clean up any mess you made as a result of me getting that wrong.
She's so jazzed about it, too. She was flying in. She was in Chicago doing the show, and she was flying in to shoot all of her stuff on Mondays, getting about 2 hours of sleep a night. I don't know how she pulled it off, but... and Daniel Isaac, who's another wonderful theater actor in town. He plays Ben Kim.
I went back and I found on YouTube there's this compilation called The Best of Bill Stern.
Oh.
Is it Stearns?
Stern,
singular.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of clips from early on, and he's there.
Yeah.
He's in the background, almost an extra.
It's funny. His role has grown too, and he had a couple scenes last season where he's doing the striptease in the elevator, and
I was embarrassed for him.
He loved it. He killed that scene. So he has actually. There were a number of us that started off with small roles that have grown, and I love that about these writers.
I thought there is no such thing as a small role.
Come on now. There's no.
I know. I'm just teasing.
Roles with very few lines.
Well, and I think that's it's a good lesson, right?
Yes.
That if you show up and you do your work and you have the backstory and you commit to the memorization and you allow yourself those spontaneous moments, then the role might grow, or you might meet somebody who hires you for another project. And I think that's what they mean when they say there are no small roles. If you can make it your full-time job, no matter how many lines you've got.
Absolutely. And if nothing even came of it, if the role had remained as small in quotes, as it was at the beginning, I still would have meant I could afford to do theater that paid me very little. It's a trade-off at that, and not even a trade-off. It's like Showtime was my benefactor.
Yeah. Well, and to be able to do it so close to home too.
Yeah. Oh, it's God. I have to say, Americans and Billions being so close. I walked to. I live in Park Slope, Brooklyn, and I would walk literally 7 minutes to the American set.
Is it true that you would sit there on days you weren't working, drinking gin and tonics and rubbing it in the faces of people who are working 12-hour days?
Well, I will say
because that seems like a really dollar bill dick.
It was a bit.
To
It was
me.
a bit dickish, but. Yeah, the roads, the exterior of the roads house is literally at the end of my block. It's a brownstone at the end of our block, and I would come home late sometimes, and there would be the crew, and I was like, "Oh, these are my guys," and I'd be like, "Hey," and it would be funny. I know all of them, and we all get along great. And one time I came back out with a gin and tonic and sat on my stoop, and was like, "Hey, how much longer you guys got?"
You could have just invited them all over for the after party.
I have a flask with me at almost every moment, and I offered, and they were professional or something, and said, "No, I can't."
Does Damien switch back and forth between his American accent and his British accent, his real voice between scenes?
It depends. I have heard him do that, but more often than not, I have noticed him dropping the accent when the scene's over.
Yeah.
But I don't. He's not. I don't think he's a Streepian actor where Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Where he's
or Daniel Day-Lewis.
Or Daniel Day-Lewis. No, he's certainly a great character, and he's a jokester. So he likes to sort of fuck around.
I find him scary.
You do?
I think just because Axe is so scary, and after watching Homeland, that was very complicated.
Complicated relationship with a gentleman. Yeah.
I also. I have a hard time watching him do interviews because the British voice seems like a put on.
Yes, I agree. The same thing. Did you watch The Americans? Had you
yeah.
ever seen? Okay, Matthew Rhys.
Yeah,
same
he's
thing.
Welsh, right?
He's Welsh, and actually Damien is half Welsh. I got it in my brain one time. He mentioned to me one time that they knew each other, so I got it into my brain that they were roommates and they went to school together. And I've been telling everybody that. And I even said with Damien there, I was like, well, they're like best buddies from childhood, and they went to school together. And he was like, I literally met him a couple times.
What do you think? All Welsh people
exactly.
are related?
But my first day on the set of The Americans, it was really early. I was a little grumpy, which was so stupid because I had a job. Why am I grumpy? But I had to put that stupid wig on.Maybe that was it.
What the internet calls the pedophile.
Everyone thought I was a pedophile the whole first season.
You were very interested in Paige.
I was for her soul. I was interested in her soul.
I feel like that's one of those things that writers could have gone either way. Like they wrote it so that you had multiple potentials for that character.
I was told we got the wig got a big haircut for the second season. It was still awful, but it wasn't. If you go back and look at the difference between season 2 and 3, there's a marked difference. I was told that the edict came from on high that it had to be less creepy. Like they didn't say what to cut, what to do. They just said make it less creepy.
Did you ever bond with Carrie Russell about a signature hair that went through a restyle?
No, you mean the Felicity thing?
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I think to this day, even after The Americans, and now she's on Broadway and Burn This right now, I think people still think of her as Felicity.
I think that may be true. I watched it. Felicity was on when I first moved to New York, so I actually was like, oh, she's just moving to New York. So the first season, my wife and I watched it, and it was really, I thought it was really good. She was great.
Yeah. She's always been a great actor.
Yeah, but I did not ever bring up Felicity just because I thought I don't really know what her relationship to that role is, and I don't know how it'd be taken. And if you've seen the show, she will fucking straight up kill you.
Yes, I know.
Brutal.
Actually, I would love to. If I interviewed her, I might mention Felicity because it's like I'm just like so in the demo, but I would not ask her about the hair.
No, well, you maybe.
But I would totally ask her about all the martial arts training she must have had to go through for The Americans.
They were, and there was a whole season where she was pregnant and visibly pregnant. Yeah, and they hid it. There was in that whole season 4, I think. Note how many times she's got a large salad bowl of grocery bags in front of her. But anyway, the first time I was on set, I was grumpy. Matthew Reese came walking in, very chipper, and he was like, "Hello, everybody, how are you?" And, that's the worst Matthew Reese accent you've ever heard. So,
I'm sending it to him.
And I remember thinking, God, give it a rest. Stop with the fake British accent thing, because I'd seen the show.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, good morning. Great to see you. It's like, oh, God. Because I'd heard him on the show, and that was the only way I knew him. And his American accent was so spot on.
It's the same with Rick from The Walking Dead.
Yes, exactly.
It's
All
like,
these people.
what?
It's pretty extraordinary.
Do you do any dialect work?
I do. I did a Hercules Mulligan was Irish.
Oh, right.
And I've done some work at Irish Rep and readings, and I love doing that. And for a while, my only real go-to was Scottish. I can't do.
You would be Kelly O'Coin.
Yeah, I can't. I did a play at La Jolla Playhouse called A Dram of Drumhicket, which was a Scotch.
Sorry, what?
A Dram of Drumhicket.
Oh, yes.
And I was a very loud, rabble-rousing Scottish bartender.
That's awesome.
And it was so much fun. And I had the Scottish accent down at that time, and I couldn't do any Irish. And now that I have the Irish kind of down, I can't do the Scottish.
Right. Well, I can see that.
It's just weird, and it all sounds vaguely Transylvanian at some point when I try.
Yeah, we got to get you to play Dracula.
Come on, absolutely.
Okay, so Long Lost is
Yeah.
at City Center Stage 1 with Manhattan Theater Club starting May 14th.
Yeah, Alex Wolff, Lee Turgeson, Annie Paris, and directed by Dan Sullivan.
And then opening night is June 4th.
Right.
And then you've also got Billions at Sunday nights. Do you make it a point to be home Sunday nights to live tweet?
I do. I was out in Portland for I think maybe episode 2. I was with my dad at a Blazer game on Sunday night, and
That's not too shabby.
No, it's a good problem. It's a champagne problem.
Do you sit courtside?
It depends. I have sat courtside, but it's largely it depends. I work with an organization that has. That works with NBA arenas, and so sometimes if there's availability, I can do that.
So it's not like dollar bills in the building, y'all.
I don't think so. Although I went to a couple Nets games this year, and they're fans of the show, and so we got put on the Jumbotron, which was kind of. I was there with Ari Spiros, with Steve Kunkin, and so we strangled each other, fake strangled each other on the Jumbotron. But I'll set up the tweets ahead of time on my phone, and I'll give myself a little crib sheet. So, the game's at 6 Portland time, which means it's 9 o'clock. That's when the episode's starting. When it's 6:10, hit that tweet, send that. So I can at least have something happening.
Wow, what if they did like a last-minute re-edit?
Oh, I'd be screwed. Or if I got it wrong and I revealed some plot point beforehand. Yeah, I do worry about stuff like that sometimes, but
Yikes.
Usually I'm watching.
Dollar bill.
Yeah.
Had a client who got mad at him.
Yeah.
Bye, Bill.
Bye. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, that's a very generous thing to do. I assume it's not in your contract that you have to live tweet the show.
No, Showtime certainly likes that we do, that so many of us do, and the fans seem to really like it, and so I enjoy it. I really do. I enjoy the medium. I like how short it is. I like the brevity. My friends in high school and I always try to out-clever each other anyway, so Twitter is like the best. It's all about wit and how fast you can zing the other guy, so Twitter's a good platform for us.
I know you started doing theater in school.
Yeah.
And 6th grade, right? You got the bug?
5th grade.
Okay.
My mom recently uncovered a photograph of me in preschool or kindergarten, where I was. It was a Christmas pageant, and I was a king.
Oh my gosh!
But I remember I was in 5th grade, and I was in chorus, and there were only 2 guys in the chorus. So there was a good chance that if you were a guy, you were going to get a part.
Is this what you sounded like in chorus?
Okay.
Well, they blew up the Chicken Man in Philly last night, and they blew up his house too.
I can't get enough.
Our songs were a little less violent, but she wrote this play called "The Trial of Mother Goose."
Oh.
And I was one of the only boys, and she cast me as Old King Cole. And the premise of the show was that the denizens of Fairyland were suing Mother Goose for defamation of character.
Your teacher wrote this?
Yeah.
It's
and
so like into the woods.
it's so kind of into the woods, but not.
Yeah. Or even like Shrek, where he's in the swamp with all of the fairy tale creatures.
It was very clever. I mean,
Yeah.
that was probably, for the parents. Like, okay, the play may suck, but and these kids might not have any talent, but we'll laugh at the premise of it. That was like giving something to them. And I remember the first time I did something slightly different, or I screwed up, and I don't know, I couldn't get something out of my pocket in time, and I did something slightly different, and the crowd laughed. And they laughed at me. They didn't laugh at the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I like this. I can do this. And all the girls were in the shows, too. So I liked that, too.
Yeah, it's like guys who take up cheerleading and
Yeah.
they get made fun of, and they're like, who's spending their day with all, like the hottest girls in school?
So I would say that I got the bug at that point. My dad was a politician, so there
Yes,
was a
congressman.
there's a performative aspect to his life. My mom was a singer, and my grandpa played mandolin, and so they were, a lot of people in my family were up in front of people, so I got comfortable with that.
Did you get to see like touring Broadway productions? How close were you to Portland? I know you were in a small town in Oregon.
We were in Forest Grove, which is about 45 minutes out of Portland. I think we would go down to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival during the summer. So some of my first big professional theater, high-quality professional theater was Shakespeare or those types of
I
performances.
wonder if I saw you in anything, because I used to go for spring break every year when I was in high school.
I was an actor there for 2 seasons, 92 and 93.
Okay, that was probably just before I
Oh,
started
great.
going.
Did you just call me old? Okay, great. I get it. I get
No,
where the
I
interview's
mean,
going.
it's Kelly AuCoin 77. I just assume, I know that's the year the Trailblazers won the championship, but I'm
Yes.
just going to assume that's the year you were born. You're
I
2
know.
years older than me.
I'll let you believe that. But when we were in D.C., that's when I got to see a lot of the touring shows.
Right,
We
because
would
having a congressman dad, you were in D.C. a
Well,
lot.
right, we were there, and so like I saw James Earl Jones and Christopher Plummer in Othello when they toured to the National. We saw the original cast of The Wiz when it came through. I am dating myself.
It's okay. I think it's a matter of public record.
Yeah, probably. And then we would come up to New York and see shows. So that was where I got probably my first real sense of what Broadway was or what New York theater was like.
When did you make your professional debut?
My professional debut, I guess my professional debut was in Portland, Oregon. After college, I had a Volkswagen bus. I drove around the country, ostensibly to hand off my resume at different theaters in every city I could find.
The way you used to do it before email.
Like you do.
Speaking of
Yeah.
old man
I know,
over
yeah.
there.
And I ran out of money in Portland, Oregon, which fortunately
Which was
my
45
hometown.
minutes away from your house.
No, this was D.C. So, this was from D.C.
Oh, got it.
So I went to.
I was picturing you leaving your hometown and being like, I'm going to hit every regional theater in the country. And 45 minutes later.
I didn't strategize well. Okay, look, there was no full
Jeez.
tank of gas. No, I went to Oberlin College with Seth Rudetsky, actually.
Oh, wow.
Who I know. I think you guys are.
Yeah, we worked together at Sirius for a long time.
Oh, okay, yeah. And we did Runaways together my freshman year at Oberlin.
Wow.
But so we were living in D.C. at the time, and I spent the summer making money. And that September, I took off driving around the country and ran out of money in Portland. So it was a good 3,000 miles away.
Okay, fair enough. And you could, I assume,
my
get a ride home.
Well, my parents had a place I could stay. They had a 1-bedroom apartment for when he was out there for work, so I was able to stay there. One of my friends had moved out there, so I crashed with him a bunch too. I worked at a steel mill for a month to get money to come back across the country, the recycling end of the steel mill. And I auditioned for a show and got in. And the woman was like, "This is a big risk because you don't live here, and you're telling me you're going back east, but you'll be back. So you'll come back?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely," and I did. And so my professional debut was in Elia the Mind, Sam Shepard play, in 2019, early 90s.
1904.
In 1904. And we opened the day the first Iraq War started.
Oh, my gosh.
And we closed, maybe 2 days before the war ended. So we didn't have a huge turnout. But it was great because it was a huge ensemble cast. All the bigwigs of Portland theater, and Portland is a really good theater scene still.
I went to college in Tacoma.
Oh, so you
and
know
so
the
I
Northwest.
used to drive down to Portland mostly for like indie rock concerts.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
Good
so I
city
know
for that.
Portland. I always thought that's where I'd end up.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a radio personality, and I thought, you know, you can only start in smaller markets. So
Right.
I'll work my way up to Portland. I ended up getting hired to produce a morning show in San Francisco, like
Really?
a month out of college.
Oh,
So
my God.
I went straight to the big.
That's huge. I didn't know that. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I got to know. It was a perfect way to get to know a lot of people. It was a cast of I think 10, and from that I got cast in another play, and then from that I ended up getting the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. So that was my first 3 years professionally. It was a bit of a domino thing.
And did you move to New York like, I'm going to make it, or did you move there with a job?
I moved to LA from there because I figured, oh, this is, things are falling in place pretty
Yeah.
quickly. I can make it down there. And my girlfriend at the time, wife now, had graduated in the interim and had moved back home to LA where she's
Is that
from.
the phenomenal Carolyn?
That is the phenomenal Carolyn Hall.
Does every playbill bio end with that?
They're shorter and shorter all the time, so I've had to cut that. But that comes from a review. She had a review that said, danced superbly by the phenomenal Carolyn Hall. So when I did Julius Caesar, she had just got that review. That was the first time I put it in a program. And
Wait, what year was Julius Caesar?
2005.
Okay, yeah, because I found another playbill just last night. I was
Yeah.
going through a bunch of playbills, and there's one with your picture on the cover. I'm
Oh.
trying to remember. It's a group picture, and it's from 2007.
Oh, that's probably Some Men.
Yes,
Yeah.
I brought it just
You
in
did?
case you wanted to see it. Yeah, and I just was like, oh, I wonder what his bio said, before
Right.
Billions and before The Americans.
Right.
So I went in and I was like, wait, I know this last line. Loved the phenomenal Carolyn Hall.
Yeah, I was gonna have it in this one, but I think we're only allowed like 75 words. I think in this, which
Love
is
to the.
well, Carolyn Hall.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't
that's-
waste 7 words.
That's 7 words.
Yeah.
Now, come on, I love you, baby, but jeez.
I don't know. You're going to start rumors.
Yeah.
Page 6 is going to pick it up and be like, every bio until now, Trouble in Paradise.
She went to exactly. She actually went to see Caesar with the guy who had choreographed the piece. She was thusly reviewed.
Uh-huh.
In.
Thusly.
Yeah, I don't know where that came
I
from.
love it.
And so he kept telling her for the next year, he's like, I think basically, Kelly, that I'm responsible for that bio. I'm responsible for him putting that in there. But anyway, so Portland was great, and then LA was not. I didn't do a single professional gig for about a year and a half. And Carolyn, as a dancer, wanted to move to New York, and I followed her, and that was the best decision I ever made. Because probably wouldn't be married to her right now, which would suck. And I just think New York was a better place for someone whose base is theater.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that one reason that a show like Billions does so well is that they pull theater actors in.
Mm-hmm.
The work is so dense and so quality.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like watching a really good play.
Oh, that's good. That's great. And there are so many playwrights working on the show.
I know. Heidi Schreck wrote.
Heidi frickin' Schreck, the
like-
whole first season.
Have you gone to see what the Constitution means
I
to
saw
me?
it when it was down at the New York Theater Workshop.
gosh.
My niece was visiting us for 2 weeks, and I wanted to I wanted to go see it with her. We ended up seeing Oklahoma a couple nights ago
Another
instead.
incredible production.
Really, oh my God, I was in tears at the end. I was that last song was devastating. And Tanya Barfield, who wrote The Call, I was in The Call with her, was writing on The Americans during season 3.
Wow.
So that was fun. Tracy Scott Wilson wrote a lot of the Pastor Tim stuff. She's a great playwright. Willie Reale, it's just it goes on and on. Wonderful playwrights. So that's fun.
I was just talking to an actor who's mostly worked in LA about her first time working with a New York-based TV crew, and she was like, everyone was just so collaborative. Everyone was like so excited to lift each other up, and I wasn't used to that.
That was
like,
an actor or a writer?
It was an actor.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. I think people get. There are two things that I've noticed when people come onto our set. One is stuff like that, where people are sort of shocked that we are as ensemble based as we are, and the other you see at table reads. Like this group loves to outdo we all try to outdo each other at the table reads, and a lot of times table reads people come in and it's just like you just say your lines, but you can see people, the guest stars on the show, sort of look around like, oh, geez, we're really doing this. Okay, all right, here we go, we're in. And that's fun, just because it's from the get-go, everyone's invested and everyone has fun and we're all laughing at each other, and it's a great group.
The thing that happens on this show that I love, and on great television, that you sometimes miss in the theater unless you sit in what I call the Laura Heywood seats, which is like the first and second rows, is the acting in like a muscle, like an eye twitch. And you had such a great moment in last night's episode. Do you know the moment I mean?
I don't. Which
it
one?
was I think it might have been Wags, but I think it was Axe who said, find whatever greatness is in you and nurture it.
Oh, that was Wags.
And
right.
there is a close-up on you, and you're like, your eye, like something in your cheek, forehead, eye combo, like, is like, Bill is drinking this in. And you had no lines in that scene. I wrote it down. I was like, oh my gosh. That episode was so well written. Like, as soon as Axe said, strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Oh, come on, Bill and Ted reference.
I know.
Oh.
And then how about the dig at Kevin Spacey?
What did he do? Taylor fucked us Spacey
style,
sneaky
and from behind.
At the table read, when that line was given, there was a collective, I
know.
We're really going there. And
were you the only one at that table read who worked on House of Cards?
I'm sure not. I'm guessing that there were, New York actors. I'm sure they were all going down to Baltimore pretty regularly. I never worked with him. I was always working with Michael Kelly. Mm-hmm. All my scenes were with him, who is, by the way, one of the loveliest humans. For a sociopathic murderer, he's a lovely human being.
I want him putting that in his playbill bio. He is one of the sweetest human beings for a sociopathic murderer.
To ever play a sociopathic
and
murderer.
with that, we're going to shift gears a little bit.
All right.
I like to close out every show with one last segment, Just Cause. By which I mean we talk about a just cause, because the world sometimes seems like a burning ball of hellfire.
Doesn't it?
I try to put as much joy out there as I can, but there are so many organizations doing great work that need a little extra bump, a little extra boost of visibility. And so what's a platform good for if it's not for helping make the world a better place?
Agreed.
Tell me about your favorite charity.
I sit on the board of Culture City, which is an organization that helps raise awareness for people with sensory issues, like if they're on the autism spectrum or PTSD or suffer from dementia. And we train event spaces. We train the staff of event spaces to better recognize whether or not the people who they might just think are acting out in some way are actually are people who suffer from sensory issues. And we provide kits where people can actually, who are on the spectrum or have these issues, can attend basketball games or football games with the noise-canceling headphones, weighted pads, fidget spinners, things like that. And in most cases, even sensory rooms where they can chill out, and a parent can take a child if they're going through a meltdown or something. And
it's kind of like the next evolution of having a nursing room for a new mother, or for having hearing assisted devices
Absolutely.
At the back of the theater that you can grab.
Yeah, and for me, this was a social justice issue. These are invisible disabilities, so people don't always know what's going on, and it's been great. We have 22 NBA arenas. We've got 250 venues worldwide.
That's why you joined it, isn't it? It was for those courtside seats.
Well, I ended up I was hooked up with them because Dominique Wilkins, who's a famous basketball player, one of the greatest to ever play the game back in the 80s and 90s, loves the show and invited me down to Atlanta to do an interview. And he's on the board.
Oh, got it.
And the people who picked me up and took me back and who place those on the spectrum actually in his film crew were driving me and started talking to me about it. And then they came back to me about a week later and said, would you want to join the board? And I've never been on a board before, but this was a cause that struck me as, civil rights, social justice has been sort of the basis of my family's activism, so it worked for me.
Well, I was looking at the culturecity.org website, which is culture with a K, city with a C, culturecity.org, and it mentioned that there are several organizations that are working to cure autism, but that Culture City focuses on acceptance and less about identifying people as needing to be fixed and more as just being different, and compares people on the autism spectrum to other groups that have faced barriers and prejudices, such as racial minorities and women and LGBTQ folks, and that really only acceptance and awareness can change the landscape. And it sounds like you're doing great work with them.
Well, it's been really rewarding, and one of the things that struck me along similar lines is the idea that they're trying to move away from these places having sensory friendly days and creating a situation where someone who's on the spectrum can go to partake of any of these activities anytime. So it's inclusive rather than just making it making room for someone every once in a while.
They also offer certification for businesses that want to become sensory inclusive. And I'm wondering, have you talked to the folks at MTC about certification for the shows that you're in?
That is on my, and if anyone there is listening, you're going to be getting an email from me during the second week. Theaters are sort of the next step. Airlines we're looking at. We have restaurants around the country. So basically the idea would be that we eventually can have someone who has these issues can go anywhere, anytime.
That's wonderful. Well, as I do every week, I'm going to be making a donation in your honor to culturecity.org, and I hope that everyone listening will do the same. We're just wrapping up. I want to remind everybody that Kelly AuCoin can be seen on Billions Sunday nights on Showtime, Long Lost at City Center Stage 1 with Manhattan Theater Club, starting previews May 14th. Go to culturecity.org to support the incredible work he's doing there. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Kelly AuCoin. That's AuCoin 77 on Twitter and Instagram. And please give this show a rating and review if you're listening on the free podcast. We'll see you next week.
Well, I was born in a small border town, and I left home at a young age and headed on down. And I started walking, following a white line. I was on the side of a wild Russian freeway with one pair of clothes and nothing else to my name. When a lorry would pass, I'd pick myself up a new coat of grit and a fresh